there was a widespread scepticism and unease in the Let's community about the time banking concept, and it was perceived to be a threat to Let's. As time has passed, however, Let's members are starting to see the benefits and values of time banking happening within their communities. So a synergistic organisation achieves more as a group than its parts could in isolation. Increasing synergy requires careful analysis of your group's current strategies to identify better ways of operating. So what are some of the ways we can do that? We can identify the key skills of each person to find ways to connect your people so that skills and insights of each person complement and support the others. We can identify and eliminate communication blockages to increase synergy by developing coordination. Streamlining your administration, allowing each person to focus on maximum efficiency within his or her role. Sharing successful strategies within your group, and create synergistic alliances with other groups that have resources or strategies that sync well with yours. If we apply this approach firstly to our own group, we can then understand how to apply it to other movements such as permaculture. Striking young lads, aren't they? The permaculture concept was conceived and developed in my home state of Tasmania in the early 1970s by co-originators Bill Mollison and David Holmgren. Since then, it's spread to around 160 countries around the world and is arguably one of Tasmania's finest exports. Incidentally, Jill Jordan, the founder of Mullaney Let's, is credited with introducing Let's to Australia. Having met Michael Linton, the founder of Let's, in Ontario, Canada, while travelling with a friend attending a permaculture course. So permaculture has been there with Let's right from the beginning. So what is permaculture? A couple of funny descriptions I've heard to define permaculture is that it's gardening for anarchists, or it's messy gardening for hippies. I identify with the avatar, myself. Permaculture originally referred to permanent agriculture, but was expanded to stand also for permanent culture, as it was seen that social aspects were integral to a truly sustainable system. David Holmgren tells us that permaculture draws together the diverse areas, skills and ways of living which need to be rediscovered and developed in order to empower us to move from being dependent consumers to becoming more responsible and productive citizens. While Bill Mollison tells us that permaculture is a philosophy of working with rather than against nature, of protracted and thoughtful observation rather than protracted and thoughtless action, of looking at systems in all their functions rather than asking only one yield of them, and of allowing systems to demonstrate their own evolutions. A key feature of the concept is that the principles are firmly based in an ethical, ecological and social justice framework of earth care, people care and fair share. Permaculture ethics and principles provide the overarching thinking tools that, when used together, allow us to creatively redesign our environment and our behaviour in a world of less energy and resources. At its core are the three ethics of earth care, fair share and people care. Earth care, respecting the earth as the source of all life. People care, helping each other and ourselves to live sustainably. And fair share, sharing the abundance or surplus with using the Earth's limited resources in ways that are equitable and wise. Surrounding these ethics are the 12 design principles: observe and interact, catch and store energy, obtain a yield, self-regulate and accept feedback, use and value renewables, produce no waste, design from pattern to detail, use small, slow solutions, use and value diversity, use edges, value the marginal. Charlie sang about all of these things last night while we were busting out the moves on the dance floor. These principles guide the permaculturalist through contemplation, reflection and experimentation. They are applicable to our personal, economic, social and political reorganisation. We'll shortly take a brief look at how each principle applies in the context of LETS and how we can apply permaculture principles when looking to find solutions in LETS, but also in our own lives. This simple creation is what is known as the permaculture flower. It shows us 7 key domains required to create a sustainable culture. The list to the left demonstrates the synergies between the permaculture movement and other movements, which embrace and associate with permaculture ethics and principles. As an example, LETS fits within the finance and economics domain as a petal on the flower and falls under the field of local and regional currencies. Many of the specified fields listed here are already happening within LETS groups, such as seed saving and sharing, carpooling, homeschooling, and reuse and creative recycling. Now, yeah, that's all fantastic and interesting, I hear you say, but what's it got to do with LETS? The real question here is, well, what does LETS have to do with permaculture? Here we see some wonderful examples from Tableland LETS of permaculture gatherings and collaborations with permaculture cairns, involving their mutual membership by running workshops in compost making, growing food and making scarecrows, and even a permablitz, which may include things such as going into somebody's backyard and doing a garden makeover using permaculture design. These are classic examples of where cross-fertilisation can occur without much effort between LETS and permaculture. Meanwhile, down in little old Tasmania, Sense have Caroline Smith, who is the co-author of the Permaculture Pioneers publication, which incidentally is available through the CES if you were looking to buy that book. And our Sense unit uses a learning about things including using an A-frame level. We're running courses in an introduction to permaculture, and we have a permaculture design course that will soon be offered for 100% LETS currency as well, along with workshops and tutorials in fermented foods, edible weed foraging, raising chickens in suburbia, and worm farming, just to name a few. Now, to gain some insight as to what to expect at the end of a permaculture design process, we're going to have a quick look at this great example of a permaculture orchard in action in Quebec, Canada. Thanks, Dave. No, that's in music.
One day I can remember where I was in the orchard and looking at this organic orchard was wonderful that it functions as an organic orchard, but it doesn't function as an ecosystem. I didn't like emphasizing, well, let's stop the negative. I'd rather take my energy and say, okay, what should we do? And so we tore out most of the trees and began replanting in a permaculture design, not a monocultural design, not just an apple tree orchard design, but right away as a mixed planting. So the basis of the design is the trios: nitrogen fixer, then an apple, then a pear or a plum, could be a cherry. And so that nitrogen fixer fixes all the nitrogen or gives all the fertility needed to the fruit trees on either side. Not just the fruit trees, it would also be the fruit shrubs and other plants as well that you put. The great beauty of these planting design in a 3 different species configuration is that if an insect lands in one, for example in the apple tree, he can't go into the nitrogen fixer because there's predators there waiting for him. He can't go into the pear, and even if he does, he doesn't affect the pear. And so he's got a far way to go till he reaches the next apple. It's every 3 trees would be an apple. And the next apple is not even the same cultivar. When we were certified organic, we had 12 cultivars of apples, just apples. Now we have, just in apples, we have over 100 cultivars. We have 18 cultivar pears, several plums, cherries. We have a whole range of cherries, I think about 7. Peaches planted. We have pawpaws planted. We have kiwis, grapes, mulberries, small fruit, gooseberries, red currants, black currants, Saskatoon berries. Basically, our goal is anything that will grow as a fruit in southern Quebec, we want to have it. We put both annual and mostly perennial vegetables now in the permaculture orchard. So the goal being, once it's established, we don't have to be replanting. But we still take advantage of spots where we have sun. For example, on the, at the base of the honeysuckles, which is our nitrogen fixer. We put climbing plants, so eventually we will have grapes on all of them and kiwi on all of them, but in the meantime we still can grow cucumbers, peas, and beans. So all our climbers go on our nitrogen fixing trees. Once all this variety kicks in, once it's getting going and it's established, then the insects come, then the birds come. We have snakes now like we've never seen so many snakes. We have all kinds of frogs. One day, when the honey locusts were in bloom, I stopped for 10 minutes just to do a survey, a quick survey of what's going on. You could hear the insects in that tree. In 10 minutes, I counted 36 species. Species, not individuals. They were hundreds in one branch. Bees are in big trouble, I hear. Big trouble, huge losses. I wouldn't know. We went from 4 hives that wintered over. We started with 8 in the fall, and there was only 4 survived. So yeah, there is big losses. We lost 50% of our hives. But we went from 4 hives to 23 hives during the summer, basically because the bees have so much of an abundance of food through the succession and the biodiversity of trees. The honey locusts flower almost up to the end of June. And in between May 1st and the end of June, there is some tree in the whole succession of trees that is flowering. So that, instead of having 10 days of apple blooms, we now have 60 days of tree blooms before the main honey flow of clover. There is some work, but it's so much less, and the abundance is really there to prove. I have nothing to envy conventional orchardists. I haven't fertilized this block since it was planted in 2007, so that's 6 years. No fertility, no fertilizer. Nobody does that. Everybody fertilizes not just every year, but sometimes several times in the year. The output is huge, not just in diversity, but in taste. We had an open day this weekend, so people would come and you give them one of these plums and they go, excuse me. And after they tasted one, they say, that's crazy. You never taste such a sweet and delicious plum in the store. Of course, the whole system is not geared towards taste. It's geared to shelf life. It's not a system that's geared to giving you the maximum pleasure. And one of my goals for the farm is bringing back the wow in food. We've lost the wow. How often do you get wowed by food in the grocery store? If you go down the row, everything is by a certain date. We function with 10-day windows. So if, say, now we're early September, we're picking in rows that all the trees will be ripe in a 10-day window. It's either the apples or the pears or the plums. They're all ready in this window. It's efficient because you go down the rows and you can pick. So even if you don't do a direct marketing and somebody wants to pick everything and take it to market, they still only have to go down certain lanes at certain dates. So you can simply have 2 or 3 boxes with you, and depending which tree you're picking, you would put it in a separate box. We have huge abundance here. Surpluses of all kinds of things. We just had an open day. We are giving 160 pounds of apples to members. Come pick. It's free. That's 4 bushels. Most people didn't even take, they didn't know what to do if they took 4 bushels. That's part of the abundance. So yes, we think of that ethic of sharing the surplus as sharing with people. And that's true. We should. But we shouldn't forget that that principle really has 2 sides to it. Sharing the surplus with people and sharing the surplus with nature. We don't need to have the attitude that, oh, we have a certain insect in the orchard that's eating one of my fruit. Oh, we have birds coming and pecking some of my fruit. What's wrong with sharing some of your harvest with them? They're working day and night to take care of your orchard for you. I've had people just walking around shaking their head like they were in a daze because they said, everything I've learned, everything I've done in my orchard is contrary to what I see here. It makes sense what I see, but it doesn't jive with what I know and what I've done. So the future is getting enough people to see that 1, it's possible, 2, it's viable, and 3, it makes so much sense. Why am I not doing it? The only thing wrong with these plums is you can never eat just one.
I don't know about you, but I want a Saskatoon berry. It sounds amazing, doesn't it? We're back to the presentation. Now, we're going to have a short little interactive session of about 5 minutes. So we need to blow out the cobwebs from the brain, and we need to put the thinking caps on and do a quick brainstorming. And what we're going to do is we're going to break off into 12 groups. And have we got any permies in the house? Any permies? Yeah? Cool.
And almost permies?
Almost permies is good. I need 12 of you, please, up the front, if you will. Because I would like you to lead the discussion that we're going to have on listing in dot points only examples of the principle that you are going to champion in action within your Let's group. okay? Just things that are going on in your group that relate to that particular principle. And if you've got nothing going on in your group, then you just need to get creative and think about, well, what do we actually want to be happening in our group, okay? So treat it as a bit of a wish list, if you will. So all of you fabulous permies that put your hand up, could you come up the front and give me a hand? Thank you. And what we're going to do is at the end of that process, we're going to put up around the walls all of the examples. And I invite you all to make a contribution to any of the lists if you see that something is missing, okay? So Jenny, our lovely Jenny over here, has the paper and the pens. If I give you each a principle, and for those people that are sitting in the audience, if you'd just like to go and sit with somebody, it doesn't matter who, just choose somebody to go and sit with, and you can go through and have this conversation briefly. There's no right and wrong answers, so don't feel intimidated, because the whole exercise is designed to get you thinking. Number 8, where's Annette? So, there you go, thanks. Any more? That's for you. Any more permies? Tim? No? But you're an admin, so you can lead it. Fabulous, thank you. And one more can be, there we go, Julie, thanks so much. So just park yourself anywhere with one of these fabulous people. And for the permies, feel free to extrapolate out the principle if you need to. As I say, it's just designed as an activity to get you thinking about what's going on in your Let's group. And then I'll call you back here in about 5 or so minutes' time.
Have we got a special piece of paper?
Yes, Jenny's got one. Thanks. One principle only. Yep. So choose anyone, probably go to a group where they've got the smallest numbers, because the idea is to find a keep the groups. So if you want to go and join Tim, or Okay, people, we've got 1 more minute to go, so if you can make sure you've got your dot points down on those pieces of paper. Thank you. Okay, folks, we'll have to leave it there, thanks. I know I've got you all fired up now. If we can just come back to our seats, and if our permaculture champions can come up to the front with their list, that'd be great. Thank you. So if I can get our Permi helpers just to line up here in order of the principle that you're holding. So if number 1 can come and stand next to me, number 1 principle. Marina, you've got number 1. Okay, so people, we're going to just have a report back to the group briefly before we run out of time. So Marina's been looking after Principle 1, Observe and Interact, and she's just going to go through and list some of the things that their group came up with.
Pick that up later. Observe and interact. We were thinking of refugees. Doesn't matter who's here is the right person. Refugees, their differences, perceived differences to us, maybe hoping for interaction with them and evolving a relationship. So one thing that was in quotes here is there's no right or wrong, only different. We're learning from different people in the community, and I just thought of this, messy gardens, because that's what mine is like. How about we have a prize for the messy, fertile garden and change people's perceptions of what, clip box hedges and roses.
Thanks, Marina. Principle 2, thanks. Catch and store energy. Who has that one? Okay. So Andrew and Nicole are going to come and present number 2.
So ours was catch and store energy, and we had working bees, preserving food such as fruit, exchanging in Let's units, and listing our wants and offers on the CDS. Yeah. Do you have anything to add?
Principle 3. Obtain a yield.
Working for a group and doing what you want to do. Sorry, I'll start again. Working on what you like to do with the group so that you get pleasure out of it and the group actually gets yield from you as well. Sharing of information which provides yield to everybody who's interested. Recycling of organic waste, diversity of people and ideas and resources provides yield, and growing food, of course.
Fantastic. Thank you. Principle 5. Oh, sorry. Principle 4.
Principle 4 is apply self-regulation and accept feedback. We had a very small but very productive group.
Yes.
We talked about a very good example of this is not accumulating too many units or too much debt. And if that self-regulation isn't there, that's when the admin comes in and helps providing feedback and for people to accept that in a non-threatening way. By having conversations about how to spend credits. We also talked about a bit of tension or contradiction between Permaculture Ethic 3, the sharing your abundance, and I gave my example. I give all of my produce away to my neighbours, and lately I'm a brand newbie to Let's, and I'm thinking maybe I should be selling those duck eggs rather than giving to the lady down the road who then delivers the most beautiful cheesecakes back to me. And that's a bit of a tension. So that's actually some self-regulation required. Anyone want duck eggs? See me after that. To accept feedback for improvements in your attitude as well as your practice.
Thank you. Principle 5.
So we had a principle is use and value renewable resources. So our first point was about trading of renewable resources like horse manure, things like that are fairly common things that we can trade. Recycling, Katrin mentioned that the banners that were over there have been recycled from another company. Just general ecological processes with gardening, because we have such a lot of gardeners in Let's. So self-seeding, letting things go to seed in the garden. Using the abundance of neighbours, swapping. So abundance basically leads to surpluses, and then you can share those surpluses, swap or trade your surpluses. So that's as far as we've got.
Principle 6, thanks.
Our wee group had the principle of no waste, which is sort of synchronistic because I did a worm talk yesterday. A few of the examples that the Tableland Let's group have of utilising or working towards a no waste principle is the use of recipes. The example was lemon trees. They don't just produce 2 or 3 fruit that can be utilised on a day or a couple of dishes. You get boxes of it, and so we get yummy lemon curd and preserved lemons and things, and that is promotive of discussion amongst the different groups about, how did you do that, and ongoing. So there's that expansion of things, which leads to the next point of seasonal storage, preserves, sharing of that produce. And it was an interesting connection that there was an analogy there of having a network to share. You need to have the network to share, and exactly. So and that was a pretty groovy thing with what we're doing up here. Obviously distribution, which ties into the network. Compost. Why did we put that one down? Because compost is important anyway, and we should be utilising that. Yes. And it is a resource for both ourselves and trans-purpose, so that it's not only utilised by ourselves but the community, and it's an extension of all of those things.
Fabulous, thanks so much. Principle 7, thank you. Come up in front of it like a messy garden. That's right. Just dot points.
Yeah. We had. There were 3 of us in the group, and our number 7, just had it, is about patterns to detail. There was concern about getting it right, about communication and cooperation between the different groups that are up here. How do we get it right? Maybe it's about looking at the patterns of nature, and that nature does it all at once, and
we don't actually have to be concerned about getting it right. We let go and let nature. So what can we do to harness the energy of the communication, the connections between the different groups who want to do this?
Thank you. Principle 8, thanks.
Integrate rather than segregate. And we had a couple of examples that are actually happening and then some that we wanted to happen. So Tablelands already has reciprocal memberships with the Permaculture org and the Chamber of Commerce. Working Bees, obviously, you know, within our membership, but also we can really impress other organisations by just blitzing something for them, I think. Community gardens, great for trading spaces, workshops, use of kitchens happening in Central Coast and up here. We identified that we'd like to get into community centres, but we know they're so busy and they sort of feel like they don't need us. So, like, how do we get in and sort of get our hands on what they have? And we're thinking we need to ask them what do you need, and help them, like we do with a member who doesn't know how to spend, like going there, like, come on, you know, you're a community centre, you're always strapped, you're always going to need something, and work out what they need and find a way to provide that to just prove ourselves. What can we do for them?
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you, Annette. Principle 9, thanks.
So I thought this was a great topic, using small solutions, especially because in the round table yesterday, one of the questions we had to answer was how to attract more members. And I feel with Tablelands we've got a huge membership, and do we really need more? And talking with Suzanne from Central Coast, they had a really large let system which seems to have sort of collapsed and needs some help. And so we were saying that the hub system is a great way of having small groups within a large group, and if they can get some of our ideas about drop-off points and individual coordinators, because it's easier for a coordinator to feel ownership over a small area while still having, it's so important of course to have the larger administration energy and system. Yeah.
Fantastic, thank you. Thanks for that. Principle 10, thanks.
We had use and value diversity, and we talked about a couple of things. We thought we'd like more diversity of ages, even though we do have diversity of ages, but even more. Diversity of specialties, example, more tradespeople who can do different things. And we also thought we'd like some more men as well. Then we started talking about the advantages of having a diversity of ages and the things that people could do for each other. And we thought the young ones could cook for the older ones who, instead of them having to have Meals on Wheels, they could be getting meals cooked from the younger ones. The younger ones could also help the older ones, you know, with things around the house, gardens, things like that. Then we also thought the grandmas and the grandpas, if they like, could help the young mums by doing childminding for them. And also we thought the older ones can pass on their wisdom and be mentors for the younger ones.
Principle 11, thanks. Thanks, Tim.
Well, we came up with precisely 0 points, as you can see, because we had a bit of a difficulty understanding exactly how this could be applied to Let's Group, because in fact Let's Groups don't think you're on the right track just because it's a well-beaten path. That is Let's. And then we started discussing the problems of trading between time banks and Let's Groups. And then it occurred to me that, well, that's precisely it. Why do we box these things? Why is there time banks? Aren't these definitions just artificial creations? A time bank and a Let's Group is exactly the same thing. It's just that you're measuring your transfer of value in a different way.
Yeah.
So that's really what we need to do is, in fact, that's what I was saying yesterday. Let's not think in boxes. Let's not say Let's begins here and stops there and the time bank starts here and ends there. These are all the same thing. And we must just think outside the box and apply that principle.
Thank you, Tim. And lucky last, principle number 12. Thanks, Julie.
My principle is creatively use and respond to change. And we said that, well, first you have to be open-minded to the change, but you don't have to just accept it, but utilise it. And examples of this were using Let's Online. Go and visit your snail mail people and personally and help them and be supportive of them taking their time to come around to computers. Another example is the way computers have actually enabled Let's to thrive, because they've done away with all that dreadful paper admin stuff and the record keeping of how much each person's transactions have done. We said you need to stop doing things that stop working, but you can also revisit and recycle things that you have stopped, because they may work better with the changing dynamic. Smartphones are an excellent example of the way the future is going to go in creatively using and responding to change for Let's. And you need to focus your energies to get maximum return for effort, and you need to continually re-evaluate what you're doing and update it if necessary.
Thanks so much, Julie. If we can have a big round of applause for all of our Permi helpers up here, thanks. Thanks, guys. I'd like to invite you all to make a contribution to these lists that will be pinned up around the wall. You can just give all your paperwork to Jenny down the back there, and we're going to put that up around the room. So if something comes to you and you think, oh yes, I need to add that to that other principal list, feel free to just go up there and write it. And all of these resources will be made available to you post-conference. And as I understand it, Belle and the lovely team at Tablelands are going to make these resources available on their website. So you'll be able to go there and just download things at your convenience. So for those interested in exploring the world of permaculture further, there is a 12-page PDF booklet entitled Essence of Permaculture, and it's a summary of permaculture concepts and principles taken from Permaculture Principles and Pathways Beyond Sustainability by David Holmgren. There are a number of useful resources that can be shared, and I'm happy to email those to whoever would like them. But first of all, go to the Tablelands website, and they should hopefully have everything up there post-conference for you to tap into. So I'd like you to keep in mind it's how we look at things that makes them advantageous or not. Bill Mollison once said, "You haven't got an excess of slugs, you've got a duck deficiency." So when collaborating with other groups, it's about seeing solutions and not problems. So I'm going to leave you now with this poignant observation from Emeritus Professor Stuart Hill, the Foundation Chair of Social Ecology at the University of Western Sydney, who retells the parable of the sandbox syndrome and how real progress will be made when we find commonality with others, form alliances, and develop new measures of success. By keeping ourselves separate and competitive, we limit what we are trying to do. He asks us to collaborate across difference, to achieve broadly shared goals. Don't end up isolated, alone in the sandbox. Thanks, Steve.
There's a great story that Michael Marion, a futurist, thinking about what's needed for the future, tells this little sort of parable, and he calls it the sandbox syndrome. And he has you envisage sandboxes that people put their kids in, to keep them out of their hair in the garden, And so he tells the story where in the United States, the government was feeling threatened by the environmental movement early on, and so the CIA started keeping records of different environmentalists, and so people like myself had files on them, and And so he continues this story, and in this story, the CIA agents decide they've got to infiltrate the environmental movement. And their strategy is to put each little group, the Save the Whale people in the Save the Whale sandbox, and the anti-nuclear people in the anti-nuclear sandbox, and the biodiversity people in the biodiversity sandbox. So they're each in separate little boxes. So these CIA agents say to each of these groups, to the whale people, well, you're really dealing with the most important issue of our time. I mean, these people who are on the nuclear thing are misled, but the whale thing is the real thing, and and so forth and so forth. And by keeping them all separate and competitive with one another, they're basically disempowered. And they encourage people to see how many people turn up to a meeting as a measure of whether you're successful, or how many people subscribe to the magazine on Save the Whale or whatever it is, Greenpeace. And then to develop some particular language for each thing. So we'll talk about reconstituting thinking, or whatever the language is, to develop this wanky language that excludes these people from the rest of society. And the parable goes on that these CIA agents are hanging around with these people so long, and they're such lovely people, that they get converted. And they come out of the closet and they say, look, I'm actually a CIA agent, and to be effective, you've got to do the opposite of everything I've told you. You've got to get out of that sandbox and look at your commonality with all those other groups and form alliances right across all those groups. And you've got to stop using that wanky language. And you've got to get some measures of success that if you're against sediment going down the river, what you're measuring is the sediment going down the river, not how many people come to the meeting about sediment going down the river, and so forth. And I think that insight is as relevant today as it was back in probably the 70s when Michael Marion wrote a little 2-page paper called The Sandbox Syndrome.
Thanks, Steve. Okay, so that's all, folks. Thanks for your time, and I hope you can go away with something. I'm not sure whether we're going straight into Annette now, yeah? All yours.
Yeah, the presentation will be available on the Tablelands website, so you'll be able to just go there and download it.